Your Truth, NPU Live, the National Parents Union Live presents Speak Your Truth with yours truly, Vivett Dukes. I am your really excited host every Monday and Thursday on Facebook Live from 7:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, where we're here to really elevate the voices of people who have been marginalized, who have been left out of these traditional conversations about parenting, what that means, what that looks like, who is involved in that conversation. There are so many lost voices, hidden voices, unrecognized voices in that place and space, both in online spaces, in personal face-to-face spaces. So tonight and every night, we really purpose ourselves here to, during this hour segment, get in touch with the people whose voices we just have not been hearing. And our first guest tonight is someone who I am so happy to introduce. I'll just give you her bio. She's been more than a friend to me. In this walk of dealing with the impact of mass incarceration, the impact that it's had on my life by being indirectly impacted. And then our guest tonight's going to tell you a little bit more about her experience. So we have Dr. Whitney Hollins. Hi. I'm reading your bio to everyone. Dr. Whitney Hollins is an educator, an advocate, and an author. As a directly impacted individual, she has a special interest in treatment of incarcerated parents and the collateral consequences of mass incarceration. Dr. Hollins, welcome.
Thank you, Vivett. It's nice to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. I love every chance I could get to say Dr. Hollins in public spaces. I was at her graduation, ladies and gents, and it was such a beautiful experience. The many obstacles that Dr. Hollins has overcome. I'm going to brag on you a little bit because you deserve it. She's like, right ahead, if you must. Dr. Whitney Hollins has overcome so many obstacles. She's going to share some of them with you tonight. But I'm really just so impressed by the fact that as a young Black woman, a mother, she's talking to her baby right now, she managed to get her doctorate. Like, hello, that's a big deal. Clap it up, clap it up. Yes, really proud of you. Bring Andrick on. He could come on if you would like him to. It's fine.
Andrick is talking to me about having to go pee.
Do what you have to do because I'll engage with the audience. This is real. Like, we're live and this is what happens. Single mother, doctor or not, the potty calls. Do what you need to do. All right, no problem. And this is what really is happening. Now, Dr. Hollins is also a mommy. Look at her baby. Hi. How are you? So beautiful. Go ahead, Whit. So Whitney has to leave for a moment to just take care of Andrick. And honestly, that's what we have to do. She's also an educator. I'm not going to tell you everything about her, but I do really enjoy bragging on her because she's just such an inspiring person. I'm so glad that that we met. But as we see here, even in this time of sheltering in, Dr. Hollins is a teacher, as I was saying, so she too is navigating this space of, okay, I have my students I have to teach. She's an elementary teacher, special educator. Then I have my own child that I have to attend to and make sure that his needs are being met. She's an author. She is a college professor. Just the many different things that we have to navigate. The roles that we have to navigate. I think this is just a prime example of, hey, I'm live, but live and tend to this or go take my son to the bathroom. She did it and she was back in lightning speed. Hey, welcome back. Is okay?
Yeah.
Good. So, what would you like to say to everybody? How have you been? What's going on with you in terms of sheltering in. I told the people you're a teacher and stuff like that, and you're balancing a lot too. How has that been for you?
Yeah, so full time I teach at an elementary school. So we've been working from home and trying to get the kids to engage online, which is, I mean, it's working. We're doing what we have to do, but it's been a little bit difficult. Today we were trying to have like a form of parent teacher conferences online via Zoom. And, all the kids are not super familiar with the platform. So getting them on Google Classroom and, sometimes we'll see like they get on there and they say hi, but then they don't know how to submit the assignments or, so, they're trying, but it's just not always working out, but we're making it work. And then I also teach at CUNY. So the college courses I was kind of lucky because the college courses that I was teaching this semester, thank you, were either hybrid or completely online already.
Okay.
So it wasn't a huge transition in that respect, but I did feel bad for a lot of my students because one of the courses I teach is a clinical teaching course, and they're required to tutor a student. So when school closed, their ability to tutor kind of went out of the window, and then they had to learn how to tutor virtually and trying to get in contact with these students. So that was a big challenge.
Right.
And then,
Whitney, for the people that might not know, where are you? What city are you in?
Oh, New York. Yeah.
Okay.
So I live in Queens, but I work between Queens and Manhattan. Okay. And so that was a big challenge. And then on top of that, being expected to do that and, be able to hold meetings, as you saw, my son comes in and he wants to talk or he wants to do this and that. Sometimes he's like, no, mommy, we're not working. And he just shuts the computer or, and then he started getting his own work. So he's only 3, but his school started sending home work and things that they want him to do. So just trying to balance being supportive of my students, of my child, and then trying to get his work done. It's been a challenge.
It has. And how have you been navigating it, honestly? Because I think we think, well, the teachers are handling it, but I think what most people don't understand, like you are, like I am, many teachers are parents too. Mm-hmm. And this pandemic and in this sheltering in, now we're all navigating this teaching, working, home life balance all in one space. Yeah. How are you doing with that? So what are you doing?
It's been interesting to me because I don't think any of us are used to spending this much time with our kids. Mm-hmm. I mean, just not. Usually you're at work or they're at school, and just watching how he's processing it has been interesting to me. He says, I can't go outside. He's organizing shoes. He's like, I can't go outside because of the germs. I can't go to school today because of the germs. I don't think I'm going to see the children ever again. And he's kind of been off and on in his own way, in a way that's similar to, I think I've been off and on. So sometimes I feel like I'm doing okay. And then sometimes I feel kind of really down or unproductive. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. And it's been a challenge. It's been back and forth. I remember in April when they extended the stay-at-home order, I cried. I mean, like I knew it was coming. It was obvious that it was coming, but just like to hear it and to know, like that was a big challenge. I just spent a birthday in quarantine. I mean, and these are small things in comparison to the fact that obviously, we're healthy and, I still have a job and all those things. So, we don't want to seem ungrateful, but I do think mentally it's been a challenge for me, for my son, for the students. I know I've talked to people who we lost a parent. One of our first graders lost a parent. I've had people who lost people at their job, so it's been tough for everyone. So how am I balancing day to day? Some days it'll seem like great, and then other days it's a bit more of a challenge, and it's tough. It's tough.
It is. And I really like just what you're saying, what some of the guests have said too, one day at a time. So, as parents, these are fellow teachers talking to you who are parents who gratefully, my children are older now, so I'm not having to teach them home. We don't live in the same, they're young adults, but I often find myself thinking about how are parents really doing their roles at home or essentially out of the home with their kids home all day, every day?
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because we have these conversations, you know, and some people are like, oh, acting as if the students are slacking off with the online work. And I don't think that's necessarily the case because I feel like there's only so many options. One, your parent is working from home.
Right.
And if they are working from home, then they're expected to work just like we're expected to work. And it's difficult, you know, we don't know how many computers they have or what their internet is like, or if they need help. So for example, you know, full-time I teach second graders. They probably need assistance to get on the computer and to do these sort of things. It's not something that they could just go versus, you know, if they were older. So your parent could be working from home. Your parent could be an essential worker and then it still is out and working, which means that you could be home babysitting your younger siblings, or you could be at someone else's house with grandma and grandma doesn't have this type of stuff. So we don't know what that situation is. Or, you know, perhaps your parents got laid off, which is its own traumatic situation that can bring a lot of different things in the household. So I just think that we need to be mindful and conscious of what a difficult time this is for everyone, no matter what the situation is for all of us, and then how it could be compounded by all these different factors. Like, are you still working? Are you still getting paid? Is everyone healthy? Is someone sick in your house? Do you still have to go out and out? So there's just so many different things going on. I think it's really a time for, you know, compassion and empathy and understanding of what's happening in the world. It's like you have to be understanding without necessarily knowing all the details.
Absolutely. I had an experience with that just today where a student who I had heard from her intermittently, but not so much throughout the semester, and I was really concerned. I reached out, she followed back up with me today, and just like, basically, there's been a lot going on. As she explained more and more to me, I was like, okay, I understand. And she was even I could hear the anxiety in her voice just telling me like, Mom's an essential worker, so she didn't want me to be around because she would expose me every day. So I have to go stay with family members, but then they have their own chaos in their house, and I don't know their chaos because at least I know my chaos in my home, so I didn't know how to deal with that. Just as a reminder, I teach seventh graders, so they're like 12, 13 years old. They're still really young to be processing all of that and to navigate it and still be on track, go to Google Meets. They can do it. Yes, I'm not saying they can't, but it sounded like a lot to me over the phone. So now imagine going through it. Another student logged on for Google Meet, and just like you have Andrew next to you, just like what you said, oh, I'm babysitting, she's in the room, little sister. So it's like, okay, she's trying to do her work, but we have to, like you said, just lead with compassion. I think that was like the biggest jewel. Just lead, have to assume like, you know what, things are not well, because in our country, in our globe, around the globe, things are not well.
No. And it could be that maybe someone is just sitting at home and taking a break, but that might be exactly what they need to do to function and get through that.
Exactly.
Delivery. Oh, can I open the delivery in a minute?
Not sure.
Okay, come look. Auntie Vivett's on here.
Hi.
I'm talking. Come here.
Hi, Andrew. I like your haircut. Hi. Welcome. Everyone online says hi to you. Everyone's looking at you. Say hi. Hi. He's the soft-spoken type. Yeah, right? So, Whitney, I know you have a special interest in a particular demographic of children. Do you want to talk to us about that?
The book.
Perfect. Like that was on cue. You couldn't have planned that any better, and it wasn't planned.
Yeah, so my PhD is in urban education with a focus on children with incarcerated parents. And I came to that place to study through different means. My father was incarcerated throughout my childhood. The longest time he was incarcerated, was the last one, which was 20 years. And he didn't come. Okay, sweetie. He didn't come home.
Look.
I see it.
This.
Okay, Andrew. He didn't come home until I was 30 years old. And then obviously working with children, I encountered children who had, you know, parents who were incarcerated. So I decided to pick that up as an area of study. Papa.
Slimy.
He was like, so that's how I came to that area of study, and you know, then have just been doing. No, it's not for hands. Just have been doing a lot of work around.
What is it, Mom?
A lot of work around that, whether it be trying to write or participate in organizations or presenting or speaking. So yeah, just a lot of different things around there. Actually, what Andrew was holding up was a book that I co-authored. No, I didn't co-author this one. I wrote this one.
I was gonna say, you wrote this one all by yourself.
And it was illustrated by Kiki Kitty, who's actually a fashion designer, but she also does amazing illustrations. And her father was incarcerated, so it is a book from directly impacted people for directly impacted people, specifically younger children, because there wasn't a lot of literature out around that. So yeah, that's where my main area of focus is.
Wow, where in this, you said this book, Anna's Test, is written by and illustrated by directly impacted people for directly impacted people. Could you tell us a little bit more about the age group? Because I know a lot of parents might be looking for a book to talk with their child about this topic, because there's so many, as we call them, hidden among us, right? So many children who are impacted by the incarceration of a parent, a loved one who nobody knows about it. They're dealing with this situation on their own. And as an English teacher, I love the idea of using a piece of literature to really grapple with a difficult social emotional piece that is not really addressed in the school system, and probably leaving less so being home and not inside of the school building. So could you tell us a little bit more about the book?
Yeah, so I wrote it originally. Bless you. I wrote it originally as a class project when I saw there wasn't a lot of literature out there. And the idea of the book was that, yes, it features a girl who has an incarcerated parent, but her whole story isn't about incarceration. So I didn't really want it to be like this niche book where it's like you only read it when you're talking about like social issues. You know, we used to have those weeks where we did like bullying or like this and this and that or whatever. I really wanted to be like a beautiful book and an enjoyable story that you might just read, that a student would pick up to read. I also wanted it to be able to be a tool that if, you know, there was a teacher or a parent or a caregiver who wanted to have a conversation, but maybe they weren't exactly sure how to start it, they could use it as well. So it's a pretty easy, simple book. And I originally had targeted it towards like 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, but it was so interesting to me because then I had someone reached out and told me like, oh, we used it in high school and the kids were happy. So it really was kind of went beyond what I thought, just in terms of the age range for kids and the conversation that it was able to bring.
I use it in my English classroom. So I'm a literacy specialist too. And so I've always been really intrigued with the idea of using children's books to talk about really difficult topics, even for adults. So we kind of have this zoom in lens. And how would you explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old, basically, right? If you can explain something where a 6-year-old can grasp it, then an adult can grasp it. And that seems like a good starting point for some of these really challenging topics and conversations. And in the 7th grade classroom, the kids were immediately drawn to the girl on the cover. Could you show the cover again?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because she looked like them. She had the braids, her skin complexion, her big, beautiful eyes. It's just so important, like we say, representation matters. Even without knowing what the book was about, there were several students, and I have, I think, about 4 copies in my classroom, students who were like, what's this? Either boys who were like, oh, she's cute. Some girls who were like, oh, she's cute. Or just in general, that intrigue. And then as they read through it, it really lends itself well to your research that I've had the privilege of reading, which dispels a lot of these stereotypical myths about children of incarcerated parents and their relationship with their parents. Could you tell us a bit about that, please?
Right. So in the book, she has a great relationship with her mother, who is her primary caregiver at home, and her father, who is incarcerated. And they really work hard to find ways to stay connected. And some of the book is ambiguous. It doesn't really say whether the mother or father are still romantically involved, but that the mother still takes her to visit her father, and they seem to have a good relationship and are able to co-parent. And that Anna is very much excited to communicate with her dad and to see her dad and to be able to share certain things with him, albeit in a different way than it used to be, but still having that connection. And I think that's that was important for me, because a lot of times people term children of incarcerated parents and their families as like broken families. And the idea that
Mom, can you wash this?
Yeah, go wash it, Papa.
What?
Go take the towel. As broken families, and this idea that, you know, either the child wants nothing to do with the parent because they're embarrassed or they're ashamed, or that, you know, this wasn't a good situation for them to begin with, or they probably were a poor parent prior to this, which we've seen a lot of times is just absolutely false. You know, overwhelmingly, even through my research or for, you know, just doing this work, that all these kids, for the most part, still want to have a relationship with their incarcerated parent. They still love their incarcerated parent very much. We also want to challenge this idea of, like, you know, because we always talk about the stigma that surrounds incarceration, and people say that the kids are ashamed, and we wanted to rework that, because the shame through my research and what I found was not the kids were ashamed of their parent, like, oh, my dad's a bad person, or my mom's a bad person. No, they didn't feel that type of shame. It was more that they knew that they would be shamed from other people if other people knew. And so I think those are two different things, because when we say the kid is ashamed,
that's internal. That's them feeling that on their own accord.
Right. And it puts the responsibility on the parent, right? Like, you made your kid feel ashamed, and now the child is ashamed. When really the responsibility is on society for how they react to this, and are shaming someone who, you know, the title of my dissertation is guilty by association. You know, you're shaming someone for being associated with someone who you have a preconceived notion about. You're shaming someone for loving their parent. And I think all of us have a relationship with our parents that we understand our parents aren't perfect. Our parents have done things, we've been through things, and we still love them. And so we can't expect that to be any different just because incarceration is involved. And so I think, you know, for us, or for me personally, it was important to change that conversation around, like, the stigma and the shame. Like, are we really ashamed, or are we afraid of being shamed by, you know, people who sometimes have authority over us, our teachers, you know, or whatever the case may be, that we're worried, okay, what does this person think, or what are they going to think of me? Are they going to think less of me, or whatever? So that was important to try to refocus that conversation on what is actually the problem.
Wow. Thank you so much for even shining a light on the voice of children of incarcerated parents, because outside of places like the Osborne Association, there are very few people I hear really talking about this on such a personal level, where they've done the depth of research that you have, and where you've really taken the proverbial lemons of life and turned them into lemonade, where others in that same situation can drink from it. And I just really salute you for doing that, because I don't know, I have not walked in your shoes, but even the empathy that I have as a human being, I know that it must have been a lot for you. And yet you shine such, not just a light, a positive light. And I love what you said about parents and the relationship, that bond between children and their parents, no matter what, that's their parent. And society needs to respect that relationship and not do anything to harm that relationship, because as we've seen displayed here, even with you and your son, it's such a beautiful bond. No one or nothing has the right to get in between that bond.
Yeah, it really is.
Thank you so much, Cope. We have a little, I'd like to bring in another guest. Do you have time to stay with Andrick? You're welcome to stay for the entire time.
We'll stay as long as we can. I mean, he just the whole thing of eco styler on me.
Get that online. Wait a minute.
I looked home, I was like,
that's what he had his finger in? Okay. Or well.
When he was like behind me, he was like rubbing eco styler on my back.
Wow. So if you can stay with us, that would
turn on the light.
I'm like, what happened? I would like to bring in now our next guest, who is a really dear person who has held me down, who has seen me in some very difficult situations. He and his lady actually have really been there for me and for my husband, John. So I'd like to first bring on John, if that's possible, and have John introduce our other guest tonight. John, are you there? I can't hear you.
Oh, here we go.
Hi.
Just learning.
How you doing?
Well, I'm well.
That's wonderful. It's good to see you.
Good to be seen.
Yeah, you look great. So I just was saying, I don't know if you heard me or not, babe. I was letting everyone know Whitney was just speaking, and she led us really nicely into a segue to introduce our next guest. Now, he did send me a really long bio that tells of his accolades and of his life, which I'm sure he can expound upon. Would you like me to introduce him, or would you like to do the honors?
Well, I'll introduce him since you're not gonna do his full bio.
We can do that once we get in, but I'd really like a more authentic from someone who really knows him. I know him in one sense.
Yes, I take great pleasure into introducing your next guest, and thank you for having me on your show again, as well.
Welcome.
It's a good man that I've had a chance to meet. I met him in being locked down, being locked up and incarcerated, going through my own trials and tribulations. But I know him as Bunch, that's how I know him. We have nicknames, as any other person that come from the street that now I learned to call society. He was a hardworking man in there, very motivated. Driven in so many ways that he even wrote a book that I had purchased while he was there, and had him signed it for our oldest daughter to give it to her as a gift. Wow. With that being said, I'm gonna stop right there because I don't want to give too much of him, because he can speak for himself. But I really admire the man.
And we have with us Mr. Deshaun.
Hello?
Hello, are you there? Well, can we see you?
How you?
Hi.
Your blessings. I was trying to set it up on a computer. It's giving me an issue. So I hope this is all right for them, because I don't want to.
Of course it is. You're fine.
What's going on? Yeah, the computer's acting up. Apologize for that.
To call you your name because I'm used to calling you Bunch. John already told everybody that. So I wanted to introduce you as Deshaun Kennedy.
That's more than fine with me.
You gave me a long bio, Deshaun. Would you like me to read this for the people?
Viv, I didn't know what you wanted. You said give me a bio. I gave you a few lines. You said it was parenting, go to where. I was trying to cover all bases. You pick it. You can edit it how you like.
I think you're just going to speak for yourself. I'll give the people a little intro, a little, taste.
You're an English teacher. Edit.
Edit, yes, on the spot. Yes, sir. Deshaun Kenner was born in Mount Vernon, New York. He was a hard-headed youth who took to the streets. These are his own words, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't make this up. He made many mistakes along life's journey, and hindsight's always 20/20. I think that says it right there.
Right. Actually, what you're reading is just on the back of one of my books, like about the author inside the book. I didn't know what to send you.
One of your books. That means you have more than one book. So I see we
I
have
have 3 books.
tonight. We're amongst authors because Dr. Whitney Hollins, our guest before you, she's still on. She's also an author and spoke about her book. Could you tell us something about your books that you've written, sir?
Well, the first one is called No More Mistakes,
Mhm.
A Guide to Making Better Decisions. When I wrote that book, I was in Coxsackie. I had a lot of time. I was still a lifer. And what inspired me to write that book was just I was around a lot of at-risk youth that came out of group homes, DFY, the broken homes, the whole situation. And I just noticed a lot of us who were getting this time just didn't have guidance. We didn't have, either we came from broken family or mental health situation, out of mental health situations with our own parents and people. And, sometimes it's hard to navigate life, or it could cost you your life or a life sentence if you don't have anybody to really give you a structure and a process to follow. And, in any hood, we just caught up in a nasty cycle, that just feeds us to the penitentiary system and to the grave. And I was hearing the doctor speak about her relationship with her father. And, and I know it's a tough situation because 9 times out of 10, these relationships are strained. And if you're going me, I was going to 20 years. And before I forget, I won't. The second book is called 12 Paths to Power.
Yes.
Art of Mastering Self. It's just how do you get a better look at yourself, get to know yourself. And the third book is called Conversation with a Killer. Now this book is just like it's ethnographic at heart, and it has social science that goes into it to show how the cycle of violence and ignorance is perpetuated, and how it starts in our neighborhoods, and how it has to provide solutions on how we can stop it as well.
Wow.
But as the doctor was saying, as far as parenting, it's tough. You can write 1,000 letters. When I left, my daughter was 2 years old. When I came home, she's 22. She's 23 now. She just had her own son. And regardless of the letters and the phone calls, we still have a disconnect. She only knows what people say about me. She only knows that 8 hours on the visiting floor. And she can love me because I'm her father and I reach out and try, but it's still, it's just due to the situation, we're missing something. It always seemed like, I love her, but at the same time, as a man and as a rational person, I know I've always had to give her space, because even though I was in her life, I didn't raise her. So there might always be, for majority of men and women who have children that spend a lot of time in prison, there's a resentment there. I don't know what they go through wholeheartedly, but I experienced firsthand the psychotrauma when you sit there and you talk to the child and they get triggered about things. You weren't there for my birthday. You weren't there to help me ride a bike. When I had a problem with this person or that person, you wasn't there. So the only way you can try to compensate in these type of situations, you try to do it financially, and that doesn't help. That's not a Band-Aid on a hemorrhaging relationship. It becomes it's just like it's a use and abuse cycle. And for me, for my own serenity and my peace of mind, certain relationships you have to let go. You have to let go, and it's the only thing we can do. People that have spent a lot of time in prison, or just been away from their family, you can try to mend these bridges and try to be there for your child as much as you can. But if it's not working, you have to move on, because at the end, you don't want your child to be unhappy and keep causing them trauma just by seeing you. Sometimes you could be the trauma, the trigger to that unhappy place in their life, and vice versa. And if you're that person, you might need to just stay away. But what you can do, what I do advocate for, is because we have a cycle of community mothers and fathers, and I say community mothers and fathers because we're all kin. It's not necessarily a blood relative thing going on between us, where if you're around, if you got brothers and sisters around you, young kids, they could be your age, younger, older, you give them guidance. You understand coming from? Sometimes you can get through to someone else's child where they can't get through to them. You understand? So you have to pay it forward. If you know and you missed out and you messed up and you can't fix the relationship that you have with your own biological children, when you come in contact with others, you try, you do as much as you can. And that's where I stand right now, because that's if the lady has a strong bond with her father, it's a very unique thing. But I like to know how she worked through that, and like how what her father can do to become a fiction on life. It's idealistic that everybody said, "Oh, I want my father. I have my father. I got my mother there in my life, But it's a different thing when you actually have them there."
Yeah. So Whitney, she's here for you. Whitney, I believe that question was for you. And John, jump in, because right now in this space, my voice needs to fall back, because we have two people with 20 years of incarceration each, and we have Whitney, the daughter of someone who did more than 20 years of incarceration. You all are really the thought leaders and knowledgeable and the experts in this, and too often the policies, initiatives, the laws that are coming into place, they're not really led by the people in this room who have all of that experience. So although I may be hosting, I know that in this space, I'm not the expert. And I'd really love to hear all of your voices around what Mr. Kenner has just brought up. Whitney, I believe the question was posed to you. We can't hear you. One moment, Whitney.
I think I muted myself. So I like to be completely transparent. My father and I did not have an ideal relationship. When he was incarcerated the first 2 times and he was in state prison, we would visit, and my grandmother was able to take us to go and visit. Him and my mother didn't have a good relationship, so she wouldn't bring us, but my grandmother would take us. When he went to federal prison, and at times he was 8 hours away, 10 hours away, I didn't want to go anymore. So I didn't want to visit. There were times I didn't want to take calls. And it really wasn't, I think, until I had my own son that I became like less resentful and more understanding of how difficult it is to parent, and the fact that all parents make mistakes and things like that. So for me, that was a turning point. But I will say that I've interviewed children of incarcerated parents. I've worked with children of incarcerated parents, and these relationships do exist where people, I'm not saying there's zero resentment, but people maintain relationships. I think it depends on a lot of factors, which is one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of quantitative research for children of incarcerated parents, because there's so many variables to it. Number one being, who is your caregiver and the resources that your caregiver has. So if your caregiver has a good relationship, for example, if mom's locked up and you're with mom's mom, and mom's going to visit regardless, and she's taking you with it, it's very different than if you're at home with mom and mom and dad don't get along, and now mom says she's not going to visit dad, so someone else has to take you, because as a child, you don't really have so many options. So I think one thing that's very important is the caregiver's relationship to the person who is incarcerated, because that can have a big effect on how much contact the child has. But I also think that the resentment that we feel sometimes as children of incarcerated parents, we put on the parent, because that's the only thing we could think of. You did this, right? If you cared about me, you would have stayed. But as you get older, and I think this is this is why I love Osborne and the Youth Action Council and things like that, because you realize that a lot of the resentment that you have is from systemic barriers that are put in place that aren't really the fault of the people who are incarcerated. So yes, something may have happened where you got incarcerated, but it's not your fault that you can't call me all the time, or that someone placed you 12 hours away, or that it costs $500 every weekend if we want to go see you. So I think those things sometimes we term as resentment towards the parent. As a child, we don't really understand. And if we stay in that hurt place and we stay in that and we double down on that, we still may not understand. But for me, it's been very healing to understand that a lot of what I felt was resentment towards my dad was actually resentment towards this really unjust and unfair system that doesn't consider that the people who are incarcerated are human beings with families and people who love them. So I think for me, that's a big thing. And I would want children who, and it depends. If your dad was locked, or your dad or mom, I don't want to say dad all the time because women are getting locked up at rates that are crazy now. But if your parent was incarcerated and they did 6 months or a year when you were 2 or 3, you might not have any resentment towards your parent. You might not even remember, versus, you know, someone whose parent has been gone for as long as I can remember, for 20 years. And, you know, I went through elementary school graduation and middle school graduation and high school graduation. I graduated college and I graduated again, and you weren't, you know, so all these factors come into play. But I do think what's powerful for children of incarcerated parents, and what I would want for children of incarcerated parents, is to understand that some of the anger, most of the anger that you probably feel, because what you want is a relationship, and what you want is a connection, and that connection has been taken away from you, not necessarily by your parent, but by an unfair system that is meant to break your family and then tell you that you're the one that did it.
John, could you jump in on that note?
Listen,
That was a lot.
both were powerful, and I mean, I'm grateful that I have my daughter in my life, that she turned out like how, you know, how Whitney has overcome those challenges, great challenges, adversity, things that I know that I personally, by my decision, caused, if not all of them, most of them, because of just being absent physically, because of the choice that I made that particular time, that particular moment. Choices that really speaks to parents, my parents as well, because I didn't have the upbringing that I try to give my daughter now, or our children now. You know, being there for them, as Deshaun was saying. You know, being there for them. That's a whole different thing, because I've met some men that I've admired that had their dad in their life, their pops, and they told me they were great providers, but they weren't really there for me. You know, one childhood friend that I just called today, he's one of the major people that I used to look at, like when it was coming to growing up. I would see him, his father, they would carry, you know, take us out, take us to the movies, take us a lot of places. And he told me in his adult life, he said, listen, John, my father was a great provider. He said, but look at the places that we went to, the movies. You're not really talking to the movies. He said, yo, we may have played with remote control cars. My father was like a great, one of those men that was build airplanes and all these things. And he said, he did all that. We went to parking lots, because back when I grew up, parking lots were closed. When you had these not 24-hour supermarkets, the supermarkets were closed. So you would go there on Sundays, and you find a supermarket, that whole parking lot was really for you to either, if you had a father like that, play with remote control cars. If you had money like that, which I didn't, I was just living off of him, or you had somebody that would teach you how to drive. You know, you'll see people in the parking lot learning how to drive if parents had cars, which I didn't grow up with that one. So, but I would watch these things and say, when I get a child, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna give my child all of that, all the things that parents normally say about when they have a child or when they think about having children. Why I say that to what you're saying with what's being spoken tonight is that I know that I hurt my daughter with being incarcerated. I know that regardless of what she tells me, there were many nights that she cried, and there were many nights that I honestly cried. You know, to be honest about it, I honestly cried and was frustrated, tears of anger, tears of hurt, resentment, you know, regret, because of the state that I know that I left my child in without being with her father. I have a daddy's girl, and I pride myself for that, because I go hard for her. Even when I was locked up, I went hard for her. You know, so much that some of my friends would tell me like, yo, I know we calling you boss and all that, but come on, man, you bossing us around a little bit too much. I'm like, yo, take this here, go do that. And they was on it. They was on it as best they could be. I had some solid brothers with me, and they still with me. They were on it. And up until the point that even my daughter's mom was like clashing with them, like, nah, she didn't want their help. She didn't want nothing from them because of me. And even that, I feel bad that I couldn't work through that to give my daughter the life she deserved. My child deserved that. And in spite of that, she is so good to me and still like, Dad, you're the best. And I still feel like I'm not the best because I made those same, I come from a father biologically that has been incarcerated, was incarcerated when I was incarcerated. When I came to downstate, I told a lady in transit for the first time, I was kind of like, I want to look up my father. What's up with him? I know he's locked up. Oh, could I get? And she looked at me at a great deal of sadness. You can see in her eye, like, you said that as a matter of fact, like, yo, my father's locked up. He's in, she was, can I correspond with him? She was like, I'm sorry to hear that. Like, wow. And I didn't understand it fully because some of the things that I've learned from these so-called neighborhoods, like I call neighborhoods now, because I got educated, you know, but from the hood that we came from, that's normal. Mm-hmm. It's not even frowned upon. It's just what life is. Like, yo, my pop's locked up or my pop's not around. So to really try to persevere for myself, to try to get through the trauma that I have been inherited, that had been handed down to me. I also had to come to some realization at one point in my life to say, you know what, it has to stop with me. And how could I do that? So the best thing I did was change my life and started writing to her, started just doing everything from day one. I said, you know, when she was conceived, I said from day one, you know what? I'm going to love this child, whatever I'm having, boy or girl. I was old school on it. I didn't even want to know what we were having. I was like, whatever it's going to be, I'm going to play dolls with her if it's a girl, and I'm going to play catch with it if it's a boy. I said, but whatever it's going to be, I'm going to be in their life. And I have been. Even through this terrible situation that I placed myself in at that time, I've been there, and it was hard. So I commend Dr. Whitney for what her journey was, because like Deshaun was saying, only you can speak to that as a child of a person that was incarcerated. I can't speak to that. I can only speak as being a parent, as, you know, giving and trying to give and trying to be that what she needed.
Deshaun, thank you for that, John. Thank you. Deshaun, I want to loop you back in a little bit because I like to hear, I think people need to hear it. Did you love your daughter any less because you were incarcerated?
Actually, from day one, that was my only request, that my daughter knew who her father was, that she always have and never need for anything. And those requests that I made have always been fulfilled, to the point where my daughter, she became just spoiled, very manipulative. Like, you know, everything is, my dad's not here, everybody got to pay. So it's not even about, at times, and I'm not saying with all children, but we have a cycle where our boys, they come and want to grow up like their fathers. The daughters want to grow up like their mothers, and it's unfortunate, but a lot of the children that are being born weren't born and conceived in like true love. These are lustful situations where you got with a woman, she got with you because you're rap, you got with her because of her physical attraction, nothing mental, and then the child suffers. You know, and if you're trying to be a good man, but you're still running the streets, you're trying to, you know, you're on the fence. You're trying to go between two worlds. You understand? So when you do go away and you don't really have that strong relationship with the mother because you never really had it anyway. You understand coming from it? Then you might have family members, like in my household, my family members were drug addicts. My mother was on crack. My father was on heroin. Like I had sisters and brothers, but they were still doing their thing. You try to ask ask a great deal of, a lot out of people who don't have much and who are caught up in their own struggles and vices and challenges in life. So, you know, most we could do, everybody pays, they chip in, and, you know, love, it's like an unconditional response. Love becomes associated with money. That's the classical conditioning of it. If they love me, they send them money and this, and then we go through that whole cycle again. It's classic and operant conditioning, reinforcements. So if I'm not sending money, I don't have no love.
And how can you send money when you earn 9 cents, 25 cents, a good thing?
It doesn't matter.
$1 in prison.
Right.
How do you do that?
If you're on the other side of the wall and you're a child, you don't care. At first, you start out, you want the little car that you send in the baby car, but as they get older and you get indoctrinated into American culture and capitalism, and you start seeing the Prada, the Gucci, the Louis, the chains, the Benzes, they get caught up in this rap culture, you know, the Cardi B's and the Nicki Minaj's, and girls go do anything for clout, just like the guys doing. Then everybody want to be a model, they want to keep up with the Kardashians. That puts it, you know, it's hard to maintain a genuine relationship with the type of social standards we're under. We're under duress. You know, it's like you could be the strongest swimmer in the world. They drop you in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and tell you to make it to America or to make it to Africa. You still got a challenge on your hand. You got to worry about the storms that come and the riptides, the sharks, everything that's underwater. This is like, it's a challenge to maintain these relationships in these day and ages. And I commend the people, the men and women that can hold these relationships together, especially if you've been incarcerated since your child, your child's made that transition from a child into an adult, and they have their own children, because they might feel like then they don't even need you. You understand me? Or if they want you, you're just suiting grandparent purposes. You know?
Title.
Like, well, you weren't there for me, so just be there for your grandchild. But like, we don't have a stray, so you don't think the child's gonna feel this. All right, we don't have a relationship, but your child sees how we deal. You still coming from? So that relationship, it might create another cycle. It's just, my whole thing is aimed at trying to just, not from our generation. It's just like 100 years ago, you know, you had different laws. You couldn't vote. You couldn't live in certain places. It was Jim Crow. It was Plessy versus Ferguson. You had Redline, and you had what was Sanford versus I forget his name, but it'll come to me. But you had all these different laws that were going the Jim Crow laws and things of that nature. Most of the laws had to transition over time. The mentality had to transition over time. You understand coming from? Like, just like at the time you had black women that were fair-skinned, they try to pass for being white. Now you have white women trying to pass for being for black. Mm-hmm. You understand coming from? It's just like a social change that's happened. I'm just trying to, I might not be alive for, but I just want to see the social construct change. You understand coming from? And it's happening. You got the Black Lives Matter. You got so many movements happening right now. But for a lot of my generation that came up, it's a lot of what's done is done. Yeah. Too many bridges have been burned. Too many lines have been crossed. You can't drink out of a broken glass. Once that glass is shattered, you can't put that back together again. All we can do as a individually and collective is learn from what's happened and try to do what we're doing right now. You can't fix what's already broken.
And how do
we can?
I'm sorry, Deshauna, finish those parting words. And we have about 4 more minutes left in the show tonight. I want to give everybody a chance, because you've brought up some really important things. We love to have you back on, to be honest with you. I feel like you and John need a time to just really talk and build and chop it up and really have those dialogues that, again, I feel like, and this is a space where I need to be quiet, and babe, John, you need to be leading out, because there are so many things that just you and Deshaun really understand from the parental side, and Whitney from the child side, in terms of what incarceration really does to parents. So in these last 3 minutes,
If I can, Faye, if I can,
Of course.
I do tighten up talks every Tuesday night on Facebook and Instagram. That's the way I give back. They call Tighten Up Talk
Drop it in the
Tuesdays.
comments, please. Tell them what is it? Tell them where to find you. Tell everything.
Deshaun Kenner, that's my name. Facebook, Instagram, Tuesday nights. Tighten Up Talk Tuesdays.
What time?
8 p.m. Eastern. Deshaun Kenner, DESHAWNKENNER.
You're a good promoter. I like that.
I try to do, and go get the books. Go get the books. You want to help change society?
Amazon?
You want to save our sons and daughter? Go get these books.
That's what. Okay, Whitney, where's your book? Hold it up. Where's the book?
Oh, your books.
John came with his books. Where's my book? I don't have a book.
You got to put them out there.
My son done wreaked havoc in here. I don't know.
I know where it is. But what's the name of your book and where can we find it?
It's called Honest Test. It's on Amazon. And then I have the handbook for children of incarcerated parents. I co-authored the chapter in that with Ebony and Tanya. Ebony of We Got Us Now and Tanya of the Osborne Association. And that's on Amazon as well. So both of them are on there.
Okay, and that's Dr. Whitney Hollins. That's Deshaun Kenner. John, these last 2 minutes are yours. Take us out tonight.
Well, as always, it's been a pleasure to be on, to be on here and to be able to hear what's being said about the overall state of parenting and raising children in a climate as such as now. And I just want to continue to give back and to continue to try to do that by being an example as a parent and also starting at home. Because a lot of times we do go outside our home, and I tell Vivett this all the time, don't never let us come in from work talking a way that we don't talk, let's say necessarily at work with the respect or the courtesy because we get in a check. I don't want to give all my time to certain people and then come home and not deal with my family properly, come home and not deal with my own children properly. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we make by giving all our good outside and not taking care of home, where it can directly, as far as I'm concerned and what I've seen, it can directly, even if you don't see it, it will directly impact the world. And that's what I would say. I thank you for your time.
Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Whitney Hollins. Thank you, Deshaun Kenner. I hope to see both of you again, both in virtual spaces and one day soon in person. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone. We'll see you on Thursday. Speak Your Truth Live. MPU Live presents Speak Your Truth. We'll be back on again, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on Facebook Live Thursday. Until then, take care, be well, and remember to speak your truth. Parent power. Good night.